when we think of environmental issues, we often think of beautiful places, stunning views, wilderness areas. Yet 90% of people in Britain live in cities and towns, and it's in the realities of urban life that we need to find solutions for the environmental challenges of the 21st century.
Southall, one of the most multicultural and overcrowded places in the UK. Located in West London, a few miles from Heathrow Airport, Southall is a thriving retail centre. A huge South Asian community, Sikh, Hindu, Muslim and Christian, has been established here for more than 40 years. More recently, refugees and asylum seekers from Somalia, Sri Lanka, Kosovo and many other places have further increased the local diversity. Southall has gained a national and international reputation for wonderful silks, intricate jewellery, and most famously for its restaurants and ethnic foods. Many people have thrived economically, and yet the growth in population and traffic has put huge pressures on the environment. Southall suffers from a lack of green space, traffic congestion, fly tipping, and a general lack of pride in the local area.
This is the place that Rocha, an international Christian environmental organisation with 20 years' experience around the world, has chosen for its first UK project.
Rocha always likes to work in places where other people aren't already working, and lots of good conservation work is already being done in the UK, and so it became obvious to us that to do something in a place like Southall, which is urban, multiracial, hasn't got a lot of green space, it would be breaking new ground.
Well, here we are on the Minet site, and this is really where the story of Living Waterways began, of our Rocha Living Waterways. I first really noticed this site sometime during 1998, as I often used to drive down the Hayes bypass, the A312 Parkway, and looked across and wondered how this wonderful area of wilderness had remained undeveloped, often spoilt by waste and rubbish, but here as a natural oasis in the middle of London. And I'd been living in Southall already for about 7 years by that stage, but had never really taken much interest in this site until 1998. And then I began to take more interest and discovered that it's a huge area, 70 to 90 hectares, lying between the A312, which links Heathrow and the M4, with the M40 and A40. And on the far side, you've got an industrial estate, the dense housing of Southall, and a couple of gasometers. And here it is. It's a wonderful oasis that somehow has resisted development. And as we walk around it, you'll see that there's a remarkable amount of wildlife that's still here in the early 21st century.
When I first walked around the area, I was amazed that there could be this green space actually in the edges of Southall that we hadn't previously discovered. And yeah, amidst all the beauty and the trees and the hedges, I felt deeply upset about all the rubbish and litter. You know, this was God's land and it was being trashed by local people, and that really upset me.
The 90-acre Minet site is sandwiched between the busy suburbs of Hayes and Southall. On the west lies the A312 taking traffic to Heathrow, and on the east and south the Yedding Brook running parallel to the Grand Union Canal, which together gives the project its name, a Rocha Living Waterways. The site was probably once heathland and was used for grazing, with water meadows along the brook. Ancient oak hedgerows mark the old field boundaries dating back over 200 years on local maps. Some decades ago, the Minet family sold this site to the local authority, Hillingdon Council. And as the area became more urban, the site was eventually classified as green belt land. By the time Rocha began to get involved, Minet had suffered decades of neglect. At the centre of the site, a twice-weekly huge car boot sale spread dust and rubbish all over the place. Fields that were once good meadows were churned up by off-road motorcycle scramblers, and piles of tyres and burnt-out cars littered the site. Rubbish attracting more rubbish. On the one hand, it seemed a desolate and hostile environment avoided by local people. Yet ironically, the neglect allowed wildlife to thrive amongst all the mud, debris and junk. The variety of habitats supported a range of animals, insects, including 20 species of butterfly and dragonflies such as broad-bodied chaser. A small temporary pond was rich in aquatic life with water boatmen, pond skaters, frogs and newts, and surprisingly some nationally scarce species of water beetle were also discovered. In the first 3 years, 90 different species of bird, including bullfinches, kingfishers, long-tailed tits and jays, were identified through weekly scientific studies and regular bird ringing sessions.
And so, as you see, what we have on this site is a mosaic of habitats. Where I am now is dry grassland, although there are some damp areas within it. We've also got ancient hedgerows, mature oaks, young woodland, damp areas. We've got a canal, and we've got the Yedding Brook. And all these habitats in the one place are quite remarkable in the way that they've resisted the pressure for development and all the rubbish that's thrown here. Despite all this rubbish and detritus that people have thrown here, wildlife still manages to thrive, and there's a fragile but quite well-developed ecosystem here in this pond. Right at the top of it, you've got the breeding moorhens, you've got newts surviving in one of the open areas just a bit further down, right down through to all the other forms of pond life. And it's astonishing that although year by year, as more has been dumped in here, the water quality has got poorer and the species diversity has got less. Yet it's obviously a rich area and one that will be very easy to clear up and to improve so that it can be wonderful once again.
Over the course of time, a vision emerged, inspired by a Rocha's work elsewhere, by positive support locally, and by a biblical vision of the healing of creation. The vision that developed was of this site being transformed from an abandoned wasteland into an urban green oasis. A pretty big task ahead for a fledgling Rocha project.
I think people found it hard at the start to grasp that the area could be changed. It was so badly trashed. The evidence of rubbish was everywhere, and not just small bits of litter, cars, you know, big pieces that could not be easily shifted. And I think people have the impression that things don't change in Southall. So we stood out as being different because we had hope, and we were actually determined to get something changed.
At this point, the Rocha team were a tiny group working in an office at the bottom of the garden. Amazingly, a network of partners emerged, all sharing a desire to see something positive done. These included the local MP, John McDonnell, local residents and other users of the site, and most importantly, people within Hillingdon Council.
These are the materials that you wanted for your talk.
While the planning and campaigning got underway, the park was still enjoyed, and Rocha brought many groups, including children, to discover their local environment.
Just look at one. Just look at the goats. There's a little snail there too. They're fuzzy.
Two snails there. It's being really still, isn't it? I wonder why. Do you think it's because it's scared?
Now the thing is, none of us should be scared of these things, because most of them can't hurt us, and they're certainly a lot more scared of us than we are of them. They've each got their place in the world,
I don't like this.
and we've got ours. And who made this?
Not me.
Who made it?
God.
Yeah, God made the snails, just like he made us, and he loves the snails. Look at that.
The site had already been identified as important for nature conservation by the London and Ecology Unit. When we started studying the site, we did a preliminary ecological survey, which included plants, birds, dragonflies, butterflies. What we found was that despite the many problems that the site faced, there was a lot of wildlife here. It was really good for birds. You know, there were 80 species of birds, 12 or 15 dragonflies and damselflies, many butterflies, and it was just and a lot of different species of plants.
Right from the start of the project, Rocha began to record and monitor the site for wildlife. During 2001 and 2002, the size of the task really became obvious. The scale of the clean-up, the need for fencing and security, and the cost of the project all seemed beyond reach. More than once, local people voiced their opinion that nothing would happen.
It's almost a year since we last did some filming on this site, and during that time we've seen a lot of changes. It's mainly been positive progress, but along the way there have been one or two nasty surprises.
I think the biggest setback of all was when we were getting planning permission for the countryside park, which should have been straightforward, but it just didn't go smoothly, and it looked like the park could have been turned into a football stadium instead. So in the end we just had to trust God and pray.
The crisis that occurred was really within Hillingdon Council. Some were committed to a park, but others saw an opportunity for a lucrative development on prime land. Things came to a head at two planning meetings. At the first, all the plans for the country park were put on ice. There followed 6 weeks when Rocha mobilised local churches to pray and write to their councillors. At the second meeting, the plans were approved without a murmur, and it felt as if a spiritual cloud had lifted from the Minet site.